the pain associated with the learning curve of, figuring out the nuts and bolts of an operation are not something I wanted to do. But even if something is struggling, right? It's easier to take something that's struggling and, prop it up than to dig and lay the foundation anew.
Welcome to Business Buying for Financial Independence. I'm Tim Delaney, and I help young professionals buy small businesses so they can escape the 9-to-5 and take control of their time, income, and future. If that sounds like you, hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Today's guest is Joe Trotto. Joe is the Director of Field Services at GE Vernova, where he drives operational excellence in the power generation sector. Known for his positive, outgoing personality and optimistic outlook, Joe balances a dynamic career with family life as a husband and father of 3. He's actively pursuing business acquisition opportunities to fuel his path toward financial independence. Joe, welcome to Business Buying for Fi.
Thanks for having me, Tim. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation. So.
Awesome. Well, as that introduction mentioned, Joe is in the process of looking for a business to buy, which is why I wanted to have him on the podcast to kind of share what is actively going on. A lot of our guests have already bought a business or recently sold a business. Joe is going to bring a perspective of somebody that is actively looking for a business right now. We're going to talk through a little bit about his background, what his process has been so far, a deal that he was getting close to on a little while ago, and then what his next steps are. So with that, Joe, why don't you give everybody a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure, Tim. So as Tim mentioned, I currently work for GE Vernova, right? The big corporate giant that used to be GE International. That's my day job, right? It's very, very busy day job. I'm in this world. I know that I want to get out of it at some point in time, right? So, the idea of financial independence and growing something to be able to achieve that has always been a goal of mine that I'm working towards, right? And you go back a number of years, right? I guess 6 years now. You go back almost 10 years now. I opened a gym. That gym didn't work out as COVID came through. We were right at the cusp of being in a good place financially with the gym when that reset happened. And kind of put that venture aside. And moved on, focused on my career with GE. And in recent events has kind of led me back to the idea of starting a business back, right? And my father is on the verge of retirement, and he's moving to the Tampa area. And through that whole process, we've talked a lot about what he's going to do down there, in his retirement, so he doesn't drive my mother insane being around the house. And we actually started talking about starting a boat business, right? Doing boat tours. And thinking back to the struggles that were when I opened the gym, starting another business was not top of my list, right? The pain associated with the learning curve of figuring out the nuts and bolts of an operation are not something I wanted to do. And honestly, not really something that my father has any interest in doing as well, right? So we kind of stepped back and I said, well, let's see if there's anything for sale, right? And that's kind of how we started it, right? Thinking about starting a business, realizing I don't want to do that, and then scratching a little bit and trying to find a business that I can invest in, purchase, set my father up to operate as the day-to-day person, and allow me to be an investor and act in a more strategic capacity to it, right? And developing something that we can grow and hopefully at one point in time lead me to saying goodbye for GE at some point, right? Not anytime soon, but that's really what I'm looking for, though.
Awesome. It's really good that you have had that experience of starting a business from scratch. And it, you know, external factors definitely played into the fact that it didn't work out. But could you just touch on some of those struggles early on
Sure,
for anybody out there that's kind of weighing their options between starting from scratch and buying a business?
sure. Yeah, there's and yeah, I will say I learned a tremendous amount, right, from starting the gym, right? And there's the saying, you don't know what you don't know. Um, whenever you do something, right, you don't know what you're doing, right? And unless you have a manual that you're working from, you don't know what you're doing, right? And you know, the when I started the gym, and this is like the stereotypical, thing not to do, right? Is this, I liked working out, so I started a gym, right? Like you're not supposed to do that, right? Um, but I loved working out, right? I love the fitness space, and in my ignorance, I wrote down on a piece of paper, right? Start gym. What do I need to start gym? Have equipment, then have space, right? And then I circled and start it, and then people will come, right? And lo and behold, right, if you build it, people don't necessarily always come, right? Excuse me. Um, so I quickly realized that there's something called marketing, right? I quickly realized that there's something called like sales, um, and even things like explaining your offer, right, in a concise manner, right? It seems silly, but I didn't know any of that, right? All I knew is that if you pick up something heavy and you put it down enough, you'll get stronger, right? Um, so it was really fun learning that, right? It was really fun growing that clientele base. But from that experience, I knew that no matter how good you are at marketing, right? No matter how um, awesome your product is, there is a learning curve associated with starting from zero, right? I don't know who wrote the book, right? But there's a book, it's 0 to 1, right? And it talks about, how, that is an infinite gain, right? If you have nothing, just to get something is significant. Um, and it's really true, right? And as I think about the next venture, um, I want to have some sort of platform, some sort of foothold to go from, so I don't have to start from scratch with understanding the market, figuring out a product, developing a marketing strategy, a sales strategy, all of which I'm very confident I can do. But with the workload of my corporate job, and I'll say the energy level of my operator I'm teeing up for it. It's not a level of effort that I want to go into, right? And it would be much easier to take a platform, web, hopefully something that's doing well, but even if something is struggling, right? It's easier to take something that's struggling and prop it up than to dig and lay the foundation anew. So,
Yeah, very true. And it's awesome that you're taking into consideration all these different factors. The idea of starting from scratch again, and we should point out that that would be remote if you didn't already mention you live in the Buffalo, New York area. You're talking about business in Tampa, and then the energy level of your operator. So your retiring father does not necessarily want to jump in and start a business from scratch, because if he did, he probably would do that, and he wouldn't need you for it.
yes.
You know, but to step into something already running and operating is a little bit easier, where he can do the day to day while you think strategically and add a little bit more value to the business in the long run, which is a great setup to have. There's a lot of people out there that want to buy businesses that don't have an operator ready to go. So the fact that you've got that piece is perfect. So this led you to looking for boat businesses in Tampa. And what did you find when you started looking, or how did you start looking
Sure,
in the first
sure,
place?
right? So, this started with like all things, I think Sunday morning coffee, right? We were sitting around just talking, "Hey, what are you gonna do when you get to Tampa?" Right? And we started talking about, what he likes to do, and, his background is the marine industry, right? He goes fishing anytime he can, and, we started talking about that. And we said, wouldn't it be cool if you could just have a gig where you drive people out to, one of the islands and, you sit on the boat, go fishing, they play in the water, and have a good day. Like that's a great way to retire, right? And we all nodded, yeah, that sounds really good, right? And we left the conversation saying, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And I started the process of looking for a boat, right? Looking for, a space. And I got maybe a couple hours in of, planning out like what this would look like if we did it from scratch. And then I stepped back and I said, you know what? I know Tim, right? I've listened to his podcast before, right? Let's just see, right? And little bit of Google, and I came across a great opportunity, right? There was a number of tour boat businesses for sale, right? The one I came across, it was a tour boat business. It had two boats, and it fit the bill of what we were looking for, right? They have a little island excursion offering that they do. They do sunset tours. They do dolphin tours, and just kind of step back and be like, this this could work, right? Looking on paper, the numbers looked good. And so that's how we found it, right? Simply just came up with the idea, step back. I think it was listed a little funny, right? So I ended up searching a few different things on bizbuysell.com, and ended up coming across, boat tour, I think is what I landed with, and I came across this and a few other business listings. Yeah, well,
Nice. So when you found the listing that looked interesting to you, that had a couple boats, seemed like it was kind of fit the bill for what you and your father were thinking in his retirement, what was your next step?
yeah. So perfect, right? And this is my first time looking into a business, right? So it's one of those things. Whenever you do something the first time, you're hesitant, and you're looking for um a little bit of encouragement or support that you can do this, right? And you're looking in the the right direction, and you're thinking about it the right way. And so the first thing I did, like, I turned to my wife and say, hey, does this make sense, right? And for I doubt anyone here knows Kate other than you, Tim, but she is not very uh entrepreneurially thought processed, right? Her mind is, if risk is above like 0.1%, she crosses it out. And she's like, all she looked at was the money. It was like, oh wow, that's a lot of money. It's a terrible idea. Run, right? So I immediately said, okay, well, that's not building my confidence, right? So as an engineer by degree, I step back and put my analytical mind to it, and perked up the courage to just ping the broker, right? The broker had his email and phone number listed, and I pinged him and said, hey, I'm interested in understanding more about this business, right? Um, he replied back with pretty short email, right? And I kind of took it as like, he doesn't want to be bothered with me, right? But he sent me a NDA and proof of funds, and I complete the NDA and proof of funds. I'd be happy to talk to you, right? Like I'm pretty sure like that was the email, right? It was very like, this is it, right? And I initially thought like, man, this guy's kind of a jerk, right? um, so I submitted all of that right thereafter, right? And sent him an email and said, hey, just submitted this. I'd love to have a brief conversation, right? Um, and the next day, right, he sent me a thorough packet of information, right? The CIM, right? Confidential information memorandum, and it was very thorough. Provided like the answers to 99% of my question marks that I had out there. Um, so I have all this information now, and I'm like, this still makes sense, right? So I'm like, something doesn't add up, right? This makes sense. I feel good about this. So I followed up with a conversation with him, and talked with him about the business, why the owner was selling. And I finished that and like, okay, I feel good again coming out of this. this conversation. And, it's funny, right? Like feeling good, feeling good, feeling good, but like I still didn't have the encouragement or motivation needed to make the next step, right? So at that point, I honestly was looking for some guidance, and Tim, I reached out to you at that point and said, "Hey, I have all this stuff, right? Can you look at it with me, right?" Um, so finding a mentor, finding somebody that can give you that reassurance, is what I would recommend to anyone doing this process the first time, right? And we did that, right? I sat down with Tim. We looked at a bunch of stuff, and I got some pointers on how to think about um, coming up with purchase offer that made sense, right? How to evaluate the business objectively, and worked through that for another probably 2 weeks, right? Just putting numbers together, like projecting stuff with the sales that are currently happening, that could happen, um, and all that stuff, right? So I felt really, really good with all these numbers. Everything was there. I got some encouragement and confidence from leaning on Tim, and you know that I'm looking at the right way. I'm doing the right steps. So I worked up an offer, and that's kind of when the fuse kind of got snuffed out on me, right? And ultimately what ended up happening, I worked up an initial offer, and then some of the financials came back. At that this point in time, I had financials up until I think June of 25, right, is what I had financials through. Um, and then, so I'm doing math, making projections, estimating the end of the year. Um, and then I get, I guess, the July through September, right? Numbers, and they were less than optimal, right? And that really kind of took me back, right? And when I was looking at the numbers, it was like this could be okay, this could be good. Um, so I reworked everything, and I came up with another offer based on the updated numbers. And I presented those, and it's funny how it all happens, right? I presented those, and of course, this is I guess right at the end of December, and then I got October and November numbers, and again, it's a different story, right? And at the end of looking at that stuff, that it turned out that the business was about half the size that it was being advertised for. And I still like it. I still like the business. But there's too big of a disconnect between what the seller needed to get out of the business for his personal reasons of why he was selling the business, and what the business was worth, and what I'd actually be able to finance it for, right? So there's too big of a disconnect, and the deal kind of fizzled out thereafter. But like that, the biggest, I guess, piece that I needed to get to that point of actually being able to make an offer was the confidence, right? And leaning on a mentor to give you the confidence of, yes, you're looking at it the right way. It goes a long, long way. Um,
That's great to hear. I'm glad I could be of assistance. And I'll come back to that piece in a second because I do think that mindset and that mental hurdle is sometimes the biggest challenge for a lot of people. But I just want to go back to that initial outreach to the broker for a second because this is a point where a lot of people get tripped up. You mentioned it kind of seemed like he didn't really want to talk to you, like he wasn't taking you seriously. And that's something I try to remind people about a lot is that these brokers, especially if it's on Biz Buy Sell or one of those public listing sites, they get a lot of tire kickers and they get a lot of people. They make it so easy to click that button of, hey, is this available? I don't know for those people out there that have ever tried to sell something on Facebook Marketplace, but it drives me insane. The minute you list the item, you get 50 messages saying, is this available? Is this available? Because Facebook makes it easy for anybody to just push one button and make that comment. They're not actually interested. They just
yep.
push a button. And that's what these brokers are dealing with. So I try your best when you're making that initial outreach to let them know you're serious. You don't need to include proof of funds, but you can hint at what you have available. You can tell them what your background is, what your history is, maybe even what a little bit of what you're thinking about that particular business to make yourself stand out a little bit more. The other option route, what Joe did correctly, is he immediately filled out what the broker asked, signed the NDA, sent him the proof of funds. That also indicates, hey, I'm a serious buyer. I'm taking this seriously. I'm not didn't send a message and then wait 2 weeks and then get back to you. So the broker starts taking you more seriously at that point as well, which is a good place to start. Because if I recall, you had some good discussions with the broker about the price and trying to bring both parties together in a way that made sense on a logical price based on what the sales were. And then getting to that offer is, like we talked, we came up with a couple different strategies of seller financing and, I don't remember all of them now, but like,
Sure.
presenting offers in different ways is sometimes helpful to get both parties on board. And just thinking strategically about what it's not always about just the number. It's the terms of the deal matter quite a bit as well. And then the other point that you mentioned there was the getting the up to date financials, which is you have to kind of take what you have at the time and do the best with it and make assumptions. You assume, you hope that things are still running the same way, but unfortunately, in this case, the owner seems to have started checking out a little bit too early and made it to a point where it was
Yep.
not purchasable anymore at the price he needed, which is
Yeah,
sad.
and there's I guess just to touch on the broker piece of it, right, from biz buy sell, right? So, one, he was great, right? And there's probably varying degrees of brokers and their engagement. But yeah, he's been he one of those things, he's been doing this a long time. So, we were able to have a very transparent conversation, and that's always been my approach to things, right? But I asked him as we went down the line, right, about the how just conversationally, like, how much do you get pinged and reached out to? And he said that with a listing, he'll get 100 inquiries, right? And he'll send the NDA and proof of funds to all of them. And he said that it's like 10% will get back with a actual signed process, and he said it's probably 10% of that actually schedule and go through with a call, right? So when you think about that, if you're serious, right, you got to dig through a lot of noise to get to the broker. And they're very willing to engage with you and talk with you, but they don't want to waste their time. They obviously want to sell the business, they want to make the deal happen, but they don't want to waste their time, right? And um and I found him very, very useful. And like you said, we did structure a few different options with the offer. Just couldn't come over the hurdle, though.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And to that point, I don't know if the deal's truly dead yet. You never know what can happen in the next few months or year or whatever. You know, it's always
for
worth
sure, for sure.
checking back in.
I expect, if I'm not a betting man, right? But if I was going to bet, I would bet that what's going to happen is he still wants to sell the business, right? But his, I guess, issue is he needs to get a certain amount from it to do whatever he needs to do, and I don't know the personal side of it. But what I expect is he's going, you know, what was told to me is he's going to go and work on the business and build it back up, and then relist it, right? And I expect that what he's going to do is go and work on the business, try to build it back up, realize that that's a level of effort that he doesn't have the energy or want to put into it. And he's gonna relist it either at a lower price or the same price and just see what comes, right? And if when that happens, I told the broker and I told him, right, I'm very willing to re-engage in the conversation at any point in time. So
Yeah. 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 It's always worth checking in every 3 months or so and seeing where he stands. That's it. Also, getting that right price. Recently, I had Mike Webster on the podcast who bought the business that he worked in for 25 years, and he realized 10 years ago he wanted to buy the business, but he knew that it wasn't worth enough to actually buy it from the owner. So he worked for 10 years in the business, raising the value of the business so that he could make an offer to the seller that made sense for him to walk away. So, you know, finding that right price is important for the seller because they might have personal
Yep.
things they need to take care of when they're getting out. So that was that deal, and like we said, it might, who knows what will happen in the next few months. But what is so now? What's on your horizon right now?
Yeah. So, the need is still there, obviously, right? Hey, I want to, and it shifted from, hey, dad, what are you going to do when you retire to, hey, we should start a boat business to, hey, let's see if we can buy a boat business to, really the where I'm at right now is I want to purchase an existing business that is a relatively simple operation, um, that has some ability to grow or scale, um, you know, that I can oper operate and manage remotely. I can set my father up for the day-to-day operations, um, and you use this as a vehicle to, continue to grow and, reach that financial independence piece, right? So that's how I'm looking at the idea right now. When I look at it from that lens, you know, there's a lot of there's a lot of things that fall into that category, right? And the the criteria I'm looking for, right? I want to keep my cash invested, under $200,000. I want to recoup, whatever I invest in the first year, debt servicing aside, right? So, if I invest whatever $100,000 into the business, I want to at least, have cash flow of $100,000, debt servicing aside, and I want it to be a relatively simple operation. And the other piece, which sounds odd, is like I don't want it. I want employees, right? I don't want it to necessarily be, my father running all of the aspects of the business, right? I want some employees that he can manage and he can direct, so that when he comes up here to the Buffalo area to visit his grandchildren, the business still works, right? And it still operates, right? So that's kind of the criteria I'm looking for right now. And what I'm finding is, again, goes back to the confidence piece of it, right? In the marine industry, boat specifically, right? Like that's simple for me, right? That's easy. But as I look at other stuff that fall into this category, as an example, right? There's a um laundry dry cleaning service, right? That's for sale. Um, you know, so like this operation falls into the categories that I have, but I find myself again like having no confidence to, I haven't even reached out to the listing agent yet, because it's unfamiliar, right? And I just it's getting the confidence back to be able to say, okay, this this fits my criteria. Let's look into it, right? Let's understand more about it. That's where I'm at right now, right? Is trying to shuffle through the different listings, trying to find another operation, another business that you know, I could enjoy getting and becoming a part of. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. And I will say that is probably one of the most frustrating parts of trying to look for a business is having having the confidence, but also just having to dig into different industries as you come across them. So what some people will say is make it easier on yourself, niche down even more.
sure.
Like you have a great buy box that you've set up already in terms of financial strategy and operation type, but if you narrowed it down into just sticking in the boat industry, which you, as you said, you kind of know that already. You've done some research on it with this other acquisition. Your father has a maritime connection. There's a lot of knowns there now for you, less less unknown unknowns. And versus now you're looking at a laundromat dry cleaner. Okay, now you got to go spend some hours and time doing some research into that industry, local regulations, all that stuff regarding that industry, which I've run into it myself because, despite saying, yes, it is easier if you niche down. I am not one to do that. I still like to look at a lot of different things, and I understand that a lot of other people like me as well. So you don't have to. Just saying, it is one thing that can make it easier for you in the search process. Uh,
Yeah,
and
and
that's
it's
yeah,
funny that you say that because that was my initial thought process, right? Is um, I was drats, right? This boat business doesn't seem like it's working out. Let me see what's next, right? And there are a few others out there, and honestly, I reached out about another one, but the operation was more party themed, right? Think spring break in Clearwater Beach, right? And the numbers looked honestly better than the initial boat business, right? But yeah, as I step back and thought about that operation, right? Like I know you hate to hear this owning the liquor store, but I'm not a drinker, right? A good time in my book is going to bed at 8 o'clock. So like the idea of having a party drinking scene type tour business, it felt a little off brand, right? And I really couldn't get excited about it, and when I saw that and I came to that realization, I was like, man, I don't need to I don't need to niche down, like you said. There's no reason why I can't branch into another avenue. It just has to be a listing out the criteria, right? It just has to meet these
yep,
criteria, and whether
yep,
that's you know done with a laundromat or landscaping business or fill in the blank, right? I don't think it matters.
yep,
And but with that said, laundromat, it's a new area, it's a new industry, it's new. There's a lot more to it, right? Like I know what people expect when they go out on a boat, right? They expect a good time. But like dry cleaning, I I don't know, right? Like
yep,
outside
yep.
of I'm gonna
Don't shrink their
like
clothes.
I don't think I've been to a quote unquote traditional dry cleaner ever, right? Like
Yep,
when I travel, I get the laundry service, but I don't think I've
yeah,
yeah, I mean, when I think about
yeah.
I haven't done it, so
I
unfamiliar,
I
right? No confidence
I'm
in it,
with you.
right? No.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I doesn't mean it's not still needed. It doesn't mean that there aren't still a lot of people using it, especially on the laundry side too. I think there's a reasonable assumption that maybe there could be more people using laundry services going forward, depending on the neighborhood and the style. Like, if you add wash and fold and
Yep.
delivery and that kind of thing, you could pick up some good business from that too. The compare so first I just want to touch on that party boat business because you said something important there, and I've talked about this on other podcasts as well. When if like if people ask me all the time what industries are the best to get into, and I kind of try to avoid that, although I am going to release an episode where I talk about some of the top industries that I think people should be looking at. But more important than what industry is taking off is what you are interested in. Like, you don't have to be super passionate about it, but you also can't hate it. And if the idea of hosting a bunch of drunk college kids on a boat every night is not appealing to you, then it's not the right business for you because you're not going to get into it. And I'm sure your retired father wouldn't want to actually be dealing with that either on a regular basis. So that's an important thing to realize. I've used the liquor store as an example. If you're a Mormon or a Muslim and or just somebody that doesn't drink alcohol, don't go buy a liquor store. As good of an investment as it might look on paper, it's not going to fit your persona or your brand, as you said. So with that, and then coming to the laundromat, at the end of the day, it is still just numbers. At first. So if the numbers make sense it's, in my opinion, worth a deeper dive and spending the time looking at whether or not it's a good, viable, long-term business in the neighborhood that it's in, and does it come with real estate? Because that's another asset. Is it built out for? Is there room for expansion if you can make it bigger? Is there room to add other services or add-on services or expand the offerings that are going on? So, because you do have, from a lot of people I've talked to, you have a pretty defined buy box of in your financial sense. So it's a pretty straightforward look at the numbers. Does it hit that buy box? If so, then let's take a deeper look. Talk to your father. Is it appealing to your father if he's going to be the one that's operating it on a regular basis too? If he has no interest in it, then that might not be a good fit for you either.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, no, and I mentioned the laundromat, and like it. I do plan on digging deeper into that one, right? Because it does meet the criteria that I've laid out, right? And it seems it looking at the information that's available, it seems simple enough to where it can be something that you know we could get behind, right? Are we going to get excited over what type of I don't know, do they even use detergent and dry cleaners? I don't
I
know,
think,
right? But
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if I'm gonna ever get excited over my laundry detergent, but you know, everything else fits the bill, right? And it's one of those things where I it it just got to marinate a little bit before I perk up the courage to reach out, right? And y people find themselves doing that all the time on different things, right? You look at something and like, ooh, that looks good, right? And but you don't actually buy the remarkable tablet, right? Putting a
Yep.
pitch in, right? You can't see it because of the background, but
Yep.
I bought this remarkable tablet on Monday, right? And it's been 6 months where I've told myself that that's a great tool, right? Organize notes, easy. I don't have 1,000 manila folders around, and it's the difference between hey, it seems good, but, am I gonna actually buy it and do it? Like, sometimes you just gotta sit on it, right? And,
Yep.
um, it's a little bit of emotion too, right? You have to, either let the emotion win or die, or depending on which way you're looking at it. In this case, it's die, right? Like, I gotta let my emotions of being nervous and not having the confidence in something to go away so that, my logic can say, "Yes, this does make sense, this could work." So,
Yep.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something I touched on actually in a video I recorded yesterday about letting things sit for a second. So you found the thing that you found the laundromat, it passed your initial kind of glance and numbers test. It seems exciting. Give it a day or two and see if it's still exciting, or see if you come to your senses and say, I have no interest in a laundromat. Why am I even looking at it? Because sometimes that happens. You get all excited about it, but you realize,
yep.
no, you know what, it's not the right fit. So that's
A
definitely
and
worth
and
worth
and you
letting
say
it
that
sit for a day.
there's the other side of it too, right? So, um, before I wrote down like, okay, like I want the business to meet these financial criteria, right? Um, and this was right after I realized that this deal is gonna kinda flop, right? I found another it was a boat rental business, and, it seemed neat, right? It seemed pretty simple. The operation had a couple boats, real simple operation. They rented the boats out. They launched them at different boat sites and stuff. Um, and I was like, "Yeah, no, this is cool. This is a neat operation. It's simple, straightforward, low stress." Um, but then I started looking at what that actually looked like, right? And you know the operation, it wasn't bringing in much money, right? It was simple. It was straightforward. It was even scalable, right? You just buy more boats, rent more boats, right? It was scalable. But the current operation that it had, it was only bringing in $30,000 for the year, right? Um, and so I was looking at that. I was like, I like every piece of this except the size, right? And could we grow it and build it up there? Yeah, right. But it kind of led me to the other piece of why I want to buy a business, right? I want to buy a business so I have a solid foundation to go from. And I liked all the pieces of it except the size, right? So it goes both ways, right? You like something and you got to sit on it to let the numbers come out, or you like the numbers, you got to sit on it to see if it's actually something you can get excited about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So you're going to possibly take a look at this laundromat.
Yep.
And then as for the boats, I assume you're still kind of taking a look at biz buy sell every once in a
Yep.
while,
Yep.
or you
Yeah.
got
I
alerts set up.
I got a search set up. It's pinged off of a few keywords, and that is a space I'm still interested in. As I looked at that industry, there's as you can imagine, right? Boating in Florida is a great business to be in, right? Um, so I'm sure something else is going to come up. When, I don't know, right? That I'm I'm not in a rush, but then again, I can't take 3-4 years to buy a business here, right? So I am looking at the current opportunities that are in front of me, and I want to move sooner than later on pulling the trigger on something. So, you know, I, this year is ideally, what I would like to do is close on a business this year, right?
Yep.
So,
Have you done any off market research or any targeted marketing to
it,
off market?
I've thought about it, right? It's actually something I wanted to ask you a little bit about, and I know you've made some podcasts and have some tips around how to go about doing that. But there's some operations that are out there that are nice little gigs, right? And I've thought about reaching out to them and pulling some of the strategies. Hey, anyone that's looking to sell, and just try to make some connections. Um, I feel I haven't done that yet. It's on the list of things to do because honestly, can't hurt, right? There's outside of somebody telling me to go stuff it, nothing bad is gonna come from it. Um, but I just feel a little awkward. Awkward is probably not the right word, but not, I guess, not optimally positioned right now to be able to do that, right? And if they say, yeah, I'd love to, right? I feel like the next step, if that's the conversation, is to go and meet them, right? And being in Buffalo, looking at stuff in Tampa, if he says, "Yeah, come on down," I can't say, "Okay, I'll see you Thursday," right? And that would just be a little awkward to say, "Okay, well, can we schedule something for June?" Right? So I don't know. But I do plan on doing that, doing some scratching, because that space, I think we would be the most happy in. Um, but just there's no fish biting in that space just yet, right? So
Yep. Yeah. Um, yeah, I get your fear about if they say, come on over, let's talk. It's a possibility, but I think it's probably still worth that risk. And just, you can explain yourself and what your plan is and your father moving down there. If they're that serious, they'll talk about it. And again, what's the
sure,
worst that's going to happen? They're going to say, "I'll forget you. You're not here. I'm not interested. Uh, you know, stop wasting my time."
sure,
It's
sure,
you're going to hear that anyway from a couple people. So but you have that. Because you have somewhat, you have that niche that you're definitely interested in. Not to say that you can't still explore other opportunities, but I feel like it would be fairly straightforward to go through and pull lists of boat tour operators in the Tampa area uh, and start reaching out to them one by one, or go a commercial, like a more of a shotgun approach. I would be willing to bet that you could buy lists of either physical addresses or email addresses of boat operators in the Tampa area and send mass emails and hope that somebody
sure.
responds. But
Yeah,
Personally, I'm more of a fan of the targeted approach where you can explain, hey, I spent months vetting another business. I'm serious. I'm a serious buyer. If you know of anybody looking to get out, love to be connected with them. I've got cash. I'm bankable. I've got an operator ready to step in. That's, you've got all of the pieces, just you're not physically there
Yeah.
to go
Yeah.
meet in person. So I wouldn't let that hang you up.
Yeah, no, and that's good advice, right? And, you know, I will put that on my list, right? Like you said, it's not gonna hurt anything, right? And, maybe the first person I call or the first business I call is one that I don't want, right? To just, get that Band-Aid pulled off, if you will, and just see how it goes, use that as a dummy and, knowing my luck, they'll say, "Yeah."
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah. I actually just heard this strategy from somebody that raises money for investors. He groups everybody into tiers of, okay, this group is not super valuable. Next group, a little bit more valuable. Next group, very valuable. Top group, very, very, very valuable. So if you had the time or interest to kind of compile a bigger list and then sort them that way, he always starts with the bottom people and asks them for feedback on his pitch. So, this is somebody that's trying to raise money, but I think it can apply in this scenario as well, where he asks them for feedback on the pitch. So he fixes it a little more, talks to the next
sure.
person, fixes a little bit more. By the time he gets to the super high value people that he's trying to talk to, his
He's
pitch
got
is
it refined.
bulletproof.
Yeah.
It's, every question has been asked, every problem has been solved. So you could kind of start the same way. Call that one man operator with a 50-year-old boat and talk to him first and see how he responds and learn a little bit, and then move on to the next person.
Yeah. There's that's actually really great advice, right? And, yeah, I've heard that, from pitches, right, about pitches as well, and, yeah, honestly, I actually did that, when I had the gym, right? So, I
Okay.
remember it as unfortunately, as clear as day, right? Like, my first sales pitch, right? Um, the lady shows up and, like, I fumble over everything 6 ways from Sunday, right? I over explain myself and through the conversation, she had kinda mentioned that she was in sales, right? So, at the end of it, right, like, I kinda stopped and said, "Okay, like, I know you're not gonna you're not gonna, buy this gym membership. That piece aside, do you have any advice for me?" Right? And I just asked her, and we had a 15-minute conversation about sales, and it was really, really helpful just to say, "Okay, sales aside, pitch aside, everything aside, right? Like, what tips do you have for me?" I her note was confidence, right? Have more confidence in what you're selling, and rightfully so, right? It was the first
Yeah.
time I
Yep.
ever, made a pitch and, presented it. But yeah, that's great advice, Tim. Well,
Yep. Yeah. Um, what else? Any other questions or things you want to touch on?
so not specifically, right? We talked through where I'm at, and I think I know my next moves, right? It's really make some more connections, understand some more about a few businesses that meet my criteria, and really try to get to a point with another business to where I'm ready to make an offer, right? And I've done that, right? I feel like I know what I need to be comfortable to get to that point to make an offer, and I just gotta find a few to build it back up and go after that. I guess one question I will have, or I guess suggestion maybe that you can give me, um, my gut is telling me don't court more than one business at a time, right? Would you agree with that reaction? Is find one thing, vet it, go after it, make an offer uh, at a time?
That is a really good question, and I actually had a conversation with somebody about that this morning. somebody else that's looking for a business, and it's interesting because he came from a really high. He's a salesperson by nature, so we talked about it in terms of having the funnel filled. Uh, you know, because the problem is you get into a business, you're vetting a business, and you spend 2 3 months going deep into this one business, and you don't fill up your funnel on the back end. So when that deal falls apart, now you've got nothing going, and you got to go back to the drawing board, start your search all over again. And but the reality is, I don't know any other way to do it. I don't know that you really want to be like loading up your cart, loading up your funnel with a lot of different businesses at the same time. Unless you have a team and you're doing this professionally. That's my gut. Could you be, having a couple conversations at first before you get to the LOI stage? Sure. And then maybe you're upfront with the other brokers or the other sellers of, hey, you know what? I just submitted an LOI on another business. I'm taking a pause. So if you don't hear from me for a month or two, that's why. If you do hear from me, then you know that other deal fell apart, and I'm still interested. So just to keep that relationship open, so they don't think you ghosted them. That's probably, I don't know if there's a perfect solution. I guess I'll have to have a broker on, or if you are a broker listening to this, maybe drop your thoughts in the comments below, because it's a tough thing to go months into one deal and then walk away with nothing and have nothing going
Yeah,
in the back end.
and that's where I was at with the boat business, and I
Yep.
kind of knew it the whole time, right? Like
Yep.
you know, like I'm putting essentially all my eggs in this basket, right? And then if the basket has a hole in it, now I'm here with all my eggs. Where do I put
Yep.
them, right?
Yep.
Um, so and that's kind of how I feel, right? And I think the way I'm gonna go about this is maybe ask for a few um information from a few different businesses, get that first layer of information, and then from there, right, pick one to chase, right, and do kind of what you said, right. Maybe I'll reply to those other ones. Hey, I'm not pursuing this at this point in time. If things change, I may reach back out, in a few weeks or a few months. But yeah, I think that's the approach I'm going to take. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Um, before we get out of here, I just want to circle back and talk about the mindset and the
sure.
uh, confidence topic that you brought up, because I think this is crucial. And I didn't plan this at all. I didn't know you were going to bring this up. So it's kind of ties into something that I've been thinking about a lot. When I was buying my wine and liquor store, and when I've looked at other deals, and when I was getting into real estate, I had mentors and other people in my life that I reached out to and got advice from, and they were happy to help me. And I'm always happy to help other people when I can. Um, but I think everybody does. That seems to be kind of the biggest hurdle in buying a small business is, you're a smart person, you're an engineer, you know how to look at numbers, you know how to use spreadsheets, you know how to look at, you're also a good people person, you ran a gym, you know how to think about a lot of these things. But the that confidence, because it's something that we've never, for most people out there,
Yep.
we've never done it before. It's brand new. It's hard to know for sure that you're making the right decision. And so what I have actually come up with to help with that, and hopefully help other people that I wasn't sure when I was going to launch, but I guess I'm going to launch it right now, is a group mastermind, to help people. So I want to put together a small mastermind of people that are actively looking for businesses and serious about making that leap in the next year. It's going to be a monthly program with bi-weekly calls. So a call every other week where the group of us get on, people share what they're looking at, people give them feedback. Just make it a very peer oriented thing. And for you, because you came on and were willing to talk about this process, I've asked a lot of people that are in your position of looking for a business to come on the podcast, and most people say, I haven't done anything yet. I don't want to come on. I want to wait. So since you had the confidence, I'll give you 1 month free, and anybody else that wants to come on in Joe's position, will also get a month free of the mastermind, so that we can kind of all give each other the confidence and help each other out. I think that seems to be the missing piece for a lot of people. So hopefully that is something that can help everybody.
Great. Yeah. I'll look forward to that, Tim. Right. And,
Yeah.
it's real, right? When you think about, business aside, the other big transaction that, most people have made or, will make, it's real estate, right? And there's a lot of overlaps between your real estate and buying a business. Oddly enough, in Florida, you have to have a real estate license to be a business broker, right? So, uh, but when you buy a house, right, you have a realtor, right, and that realtor acts in that, hey, this is what I think. I'm your advisor, right? I'm acting in your best interest. And with buying a business, right? Like, yes, there are broker programs, right, where you can, hire them in that, buyer's capacity, but most of the time you don't have one, right?
Yep.
You have a broker that's working on the behalf of the seller,
Yeah.
and it's in their best interest, that they focus. Yes, they're deal focused. They want to make the deal happen, but the seller is who hired them.
Yes.
So you always have that little bit of a barrier up. I think it's fantastic, Tim. I'll look forward
Yep.
to joining that very much. So
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it. And that's a great point too about the brokers. It's just a great reminder to everybody out there that the broker is there to help both parties. They want to get the deal done, and the good brokers are honest, and they're not trying to hoodwink anybody or do anything wrong. But at the end of the day, they are paid by the seller. They're hired by the seller. That is who they are fiscally responsible to. So just always keep that in mind. When you're talking to them. So, yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, Joe, and sharing your story and sharing what you're looking at, and giving me the chance to help you. It's been
I
an honor
appreciate it,
to
Tim.
look at the deals with you over the last few months. It's fun for me. I enjoy helping people and enjoy looking at other deals. So, thanks for coming on and sharing it with everybody else as well.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. And for everybody else out there, if you are interested in that mastermind, you can check out my website, powerofbiz.com/mastermind. I'll make sure I get that up there before this goes live. Thanks for tuning in today. I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Business Buying for Financial Independence. If you're serious about owning your time and building long-term wealth, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.